Today I'm going to be trying a monoprint with my Smart Art box and making some cute little heart cards. I am so far behind on my Smart Art boxes, so hopefully you're going to see a lot of these videos coming up soon. Lots of fun supplies to go over. If you are unfamiliar with Smart Art Box, each month they send you a new box complete with full-size art supplies. Everything you need to complete your own project. If it's something you've never worked on before, don't worry, they're not going to just dump you with a bunch of projects and expect you to figure it out. They send you basically an art lesson. That's pretty much what this whole box is an art lesson in a box. But it will go over the history, a bunch of project pointers, all kinds of great information in these, and on the back it'll walk you through step by step completing your project. So if you're like me on something like this and you have no idea what you're doing, you're not going to feel lost. And just for transparency, this video is being sponsored by Smart Art Box. Let's go ahead and take a look at what came in this month's box and see what I created with the supplies. So taking a look at what came in this box, seriously, I always say this, but it's so true. I always feel like I'm opening a Christmas present when I open these boxes. It's just so fun to see what's going to be inside of them. So there's the brochure, which I already went over, and there is a lot of stuff in this one. So first we have this Gelli Arts 4-inch rubber brayer, and you've seen me use these before for some interesting colored pencil techniques from a past video. We've got some Strathmore stamping cards. These are 5x7, and they come with a bunch of them. So I saved quite a few from this project to use with some of my past Smart Art box markers. I can't wait to try those too. We've got some Gelli Arts premium acrylic paints. There are 3 colors there, blue, red, and white. And the Gelli Arts gel printing plates. This is a 5x7 kind of rubbery. I didn't know what this was going to be for. Thank goodness this comes with instructions because I would be lost without them. So now going into the project, one of the things that it talks about using are stencils. So I had some of my own stencils, but I decided to go ahead and make my own. I wanted to use hearts for these. So I drew all of those out. And then I took an X-Acto knife, which mine needed a new blade badly, so it ended up being quite a pain to get these cut out. After I did this project, found my replacement blades. So this was quite a challenge to get these cut out. But normally if you're using an X-Acto knife with a decent blade, it's really easy to cut out your own stencils. And I didn't care that my hearts were in perfect shapes. I just wanted some hearts. If you like making messes, this part is going to be fun for you. And I tried doing this a few different ways. Typical for me, I added way too much paint for the first few layers. Like, way too much. I knew I wanted to make pink for this, so I figured, okay, I need a lot of white, or actually I think I was trying to make purple to start with. So lots of white, little tiny bit of blue, and a small amount of the red. One of the things that I love so much about the Smart Art Box projects is just going into it with, let's experiment. Let's see what happens. I don't care if it's perfect. I'm just going to play with this. You feel like a kid. Lots of fun. So there is a ton of paint on this one. Like, holy crap, that's a lot of paint. And then I decided I should go ahead and add more. What? Too much the first time? Add more. That'll clearly fix it. I wanted it to be a lighter color. The problem is I had so much paint on there, it's going to be hard to get that much lighter. You can get some really cool texture here too, depending on how you roll this on there. Like you can blend it out so that it's really smooth or have it more textured. But again, this was way too much paint. I do not recommend making the disaster that I had there. So there you can see I'm looking through my instructions at this point going, is this right? What have I done? What am I supposed to do next? Now that stamping plate is the same size, or pretty close to the same size as my card. So I'm just going to stick the front of the card down on that and let it create a print. And you can do so many different things to get texture. Now I did not do the texture quite how the instructions showed one way to get texture. There was just a lot of different things, the tips that the instructions gave me. That looks pretty cool. It also looks like a mess. I mean, I guess depends on what you're going for. So now normally when I do the Smart Art Box projects, I'll just make one and then call it done. But these were pretty quick, so I decided to go ahead and try a few more. So I'm not adding more paint onto this. I'm just going to go ahead and spread out what's there. I wanted more of this light pink instead of the blotchy purpley blue that I didn't really get the first time. I'm going to rub some of that paint off the brayer. And this just rinsed out with water. It was very easy to clean up. Taking my next card, figuring out which side is the front. Make sure you do stamp the front. I mean, I guess technically you could stamp both sides, but it would be pretty frustrating if you got one stamped absolutely perfect and realized you stamped the wrong side. So I'm lightly pushing over that. And this one has way less of the pigment or the paint on the plate. So the results are going to be a little bit different that way. Still a lot of that blue. I was surprised because when you roll the brayer over it, you don't think there's that much blue. It looked like it was just going to be solid pink, but once I added pressure, there was definitely some blue that wasn't completely mixed. So there was my second card. That one I didn't like as much. It's not as interesting looking. So then I decided, let's go ahead and try one of my stencils. I'm just going to place that right on top. And I thought this would just give me a little bit of a different texture. It wasn't that I was trying to change the color so much, it's just create a slight texture with the brayer. So I'm not mixing different paint. This is the same color as the bottom or the first one. Now I could have mixed separately and ended up with more whites. It didn't really show up, but when you look at it in person, it has kind of a cool texture. So because it is a little bit thicker in those areas, it's just a hint of that damask print. So that would definitely look better if I had done it in a slightly lighter or darker color. So we'll go ahead and put that one to the side and let's start another one. Time I'm going to knock my paint over and then I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up some more. This paint is, or what do they call this? I don't think they even list it as paint. They're listing it as, oh, I guess they are listing it as paint. I should read my instructions. But it's really, really thick, very pigmented. So I'm going to go ahead and do a lighter color this time. Now I'm leaving some texture on there intentionally. I don't want it to be perfectly smooth. I just wanted to get some interesting texture. So I'm going to see what happens if I put the damask print on that and then go on top of this with the white. Again, I was trying to create a really, really subtle background because you remember I cut out those hearts earlier. I'm going to be stamping those on top, or stamping's not the right word. You card makers will know the right words. I'm going to sponge them on top. Sponge, stamp. Words are hard. So what I'm trying to do, again, is just create a little, just that hint. So I took a blank piece of paper and I'm going to make a slightly darker pink. Let's put this on top so it shows up a bit better. I was trying to get kind of a rough look. Decided I wanted to go even darker, and honestly it probably would have been better if I just left it like that. I think that would have been a more subtle, pretty look, but I decided let's just keep adding more. It looked kind of cool how it fades that way. Got that ombre look. And then lift that up. So that gave me a much, much more interesting pattern. And this just washed off of my stencil with water. The stencil, it's that kind of plasticky feel stuff. So it didn't damage the stencil at all. And adding that card right on top. Just lightly pressing down all over. Lifting that up. So now we're starting to get some kind of cool textures. Way, way better, I think, than my first two attempts. And why stop there? Let's make more. But they definitely, when I used less of the acrylic paint, it was looking way, way better than the first couple of attempts where I used way too much. You'd think I'd learn my lesson with that. I am so prone to using too much when I do different or try new mediums for the first time. So I'm just adding straight white just to make it lighter. I'm not trying to make this one darker to start with. That way, if I do the damask on top, whatever color I put on top will hopefully stand out more. And I'm trying to blend this out so I stop getting those blotches of blue. I really was not enjoying my blue blotches. And it looks, if you look at this, it looked like it was just going to come out perfectly pink, but because I had originally used some of that blue, it just kept popping up. Here, I'm going to go ahead and try to mix a purple color first, so it's not just coming out of nowhere like it was on my other cards where it mixed into the base. You can use a brush. Honestly, it would be way easier. The fact that I'm trying to mix this with a brayer is absolutely hilarious. I was being too lazy to get up and get one of my other paintbrushes. My laziness knows no bounds. You would get much more even color if you did use a paintbrush to mix that. Heck, even a palette knife would have been a better choice than a brayer. I may be the only person in history who thought a brayer was a good mixing choice for acrylic paints. This gave me a really pretty plum color. I'm just going straight on top of that stamping plate. That wasn't super high contrast, but we'll see what happens. Lost the cards. There they are. You can see there's a bunch in there. I love that about Smart Art Box. They don't just give you one bit of like small sample supplies. You get full supplies. You get to try things, like in this case, a whole bunch of times. They'll get full pads of paper, different things like that, so you can do a lot of projects. These were actually really nice cards. So if you do like doing artwork on cards, these I do recommend. But I really want to try some of the markers. You'll see on one of the next Smart Art Boxes, I got some really cool markers that I want to try these on eventually. Let's see what that one came out like. That I liked. That gave me the exact look I was going for. Something a little bit kind of grungy feeling, but you can still see some pattern. So it took me 4 attempts, but there's my look I was trying to get. Here, let's see what happens if I go ahead and add on top. So there's even less paint on there. And if you look at the one I just did and look at the one that's kind of sitting off to the left of the camera there, what a difference. And that is part because I was building texture and part because I realized, wow. And again, here, this one, I loved how that came out. Really interesting look for that base of hearts that I'm going to do. So now I need to clean that mess up, get everything else out of the way, and let's try sponging on some of these hearts. This is just stencil. That's the word I was looking for earlier. This is just a small sponge brush, just a cheapy little one that I happen to have laying around. So I'm using a little bit of that red, and I'm going to go straight on top of my stencil that I cut out earlier. Just going to dab that on there. You don't want to go too heavy with this because if you use too much paint, it'll slide underneath your stencil and you don't end up with nice clean hearts. So this is another case where less is more. Luckily in this case I had enough experience with this type of stencil that I knew don't add too much. You can always add more, but don't glob on the paint for something like this. It makes it better. I mean, it's still an ugly card. That was back one of the first ones where I just blobbed too much paint on there. So, you know, if I was 5, that's awesome. But I do like the hearts. I like how that came out. It's just that the card itself was so badly done. Let's try on this one. And same thing. I don't want to use too much on here. You want, if you're going to make your own stencils like this with paper, make sure it's a really heavy cardstock type paper. I forget what weight this paper is. I would guess it's at least 140 pounds. It was just something I had. It's probably from one of my old Sketchbox papers. I think it was a mixed media type paper. So it was a really heavy weight. That way the paint, as I'm using it to stencil on, isn't messing it up. If I were using a lightweight, let's say a 60 pound, a 70 pound, 80 pound paper, if I used that for a stencil, as I added the paint here, it would have warped the paper so much that it wouldn't have held its shape to create a decent stencil. Oh, that is what I was trying to create. I was pretty excited about this card. I thought that one was pretty cute. So set that one to the side to dry. I'm just going to repeat this with the hearts and see what happens. And I could take a small paintbrush and paint detail on here. You've got a lot of options. There are a lot of different things that you can do on top of this painting. If you have gel pens, there's so many different things. Oh, that one made that one much cuter too. And see, you can see now why I wanted a more subtle background here. I didn't want something with super high contrast, tons of detail, because I wanted a base that was soft enough that my hearts would still stand out. I liked this card pretty well too. Go ahead and stamp some on there. And I love this because while making cards isn't really my thing, it was still fun. It's just fun to do something creative that you don't usually do. It makes you think outside the box. And the great thing with this, well, I don't think I would use these tools again myself, but it gave me some ideas for backgrounds that I might want to use in paintings. Making something like this, I mean, there's so many ways you could get a very similar look with acrylics on a canvas. So it's fun because I even look watching this now as I do the voiceover, I'm getting so many ideas that I want to take from this box that I'll apply to paintings in the future that I think are going to look really, really cool. So here I made another one. I put little hearts on top of it, my little cutouts, and I'm just going to stamp over it. This actually ended up being pretty ugly. This was not one of my better ideas. But you know what? You don't find that out if you don't try. Sometimes you come up with ideas and they're terrible, like this one. Sometimes you come up with ideas as long as you're willing to try, you're willing to make a mistake and have something not look great. And it ends up being the coolest idea ever. But if you're not willing to make the mistake, if you're not willing to try those things, you're never going to find out. Oops, get that off of there. I'm trying not to get paint all over my fingers, and I'm making things more difficult for myself. So it gives an interesting look, but not amazing. I just wanted to see what would happen using some of my leftover hearts. Yeah, that's a hot mess. Now I've got to pick the other ones off. That didn't work. Man, that heart really wants to stick on there, doesn't it? Get off, 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 off. Thank you. Now I've got to pick the rest of those. I think I ended up finding a pair of tweezers and picking the other two up. Because again, who wants to make the right choice in the first place? I'd rather be lazy, make more work for myself in the end. There we go. Yep. I mean, it gave kind of an interesting look. I could see where that could work. Didn't work on this one, but it could. But yeah, some of the other cards I think did come out very pretty, and I'm probably going to use them to make random notes for my husband, just to make him laugh, leaving notes around like, can you take out the trash inside of this pretty handmade heart card? So just to be ridiculous, because I like to see the look on his face when I do stupid stuff like that. But this was a lot of fun, and I'm kind of excited to try some of these ideas with the stamping like this to get this rougher background for some paintings. If you would like to sign up to get your own Smart Art box, I have a link in the video description that will give you a discount off of your membership for life, along with all of the countries that this box is available to. So make sure you check that out. Have you subscribed yet? If not, I have a handy button right there. It's round, has an orange arrow going to it. If you click on that, that'll help you to keep up to date with all of my new art videos every single week.